Greetings, everyone. My name is Trushar Patel. I work as a Canada Research Chair, Associate Professor, and Associate Dean at the University of Lethbridge. I'm here also working as the Science Policy Program Committee member, and I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Stephen Liss, the Vice President Research and Innovation at the Toronto Metropolitan University, for a brief conversation with us. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. My first question is surrounded your remarkable career. So you had extremely remarkable career. You had applied microbiology, PhD background, and gradually moved to 3 different universities with senior admin positions. And now you are the Vice President of Research and Innovation at TMU. You have a lot of experience over the years that you gathered. When it comes to giving some advice, some comments to early career people such as me or the students, what would be your advice if you can share some lights on it?
Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to have this chat, and thank you for the question. And there isn't an easy answer for that one. It's not a choreographed journey. It wasn't sitting in a high school guidance office thinking about what I should be doing for my life and how I need to get to the various stages along the way and map that out. So in the time I went to university, it was a bit of a different era with respect to opportunities and state of technology, and for me it was doing things that were of interest at the time, and so it really begins with my experience as an undergraduate student. I was a microbiology immunology major at Western Ontario at the time, and was being inspired by a couple of professors along the way who taught some really interesting courses, who I admired, and then there was opportunity to get exposed to different faculty's research opportunities. And one of the opportunities actually was in chemical engineering across campus. And there was a very dynamic professor and really major researcher in the field of biosurfactants, and at the time there was an energy crisis unfolding, and development of the tar sands, and looking at different technologies that would help to extract bitumen from the tar sands and do so in a sustainable way. And so there was a lot of interest in microbial-based biosurfactants, and so there's this idea that you can take microbiology, and it wasn't just about disease and the bad things that microbes do. Here's an opportunity to think about, oh my God, there's bad bugs that can do really interesting things, right? Yeah. So anyway, I walked across campus and did my whole 4th year in chemical engineering and my thesis, and it was my first publication. And then the other critical decision I decided to turn down admission to dentistry, right? So, well, it was interesting because you go to in that era, the idea of doing graduate studies, you went. In my family, we were going to go become a doctor and whatever, and of course the research bug was really something that hit me when I had that opportunity, and I just loved it. And I loved the ideas that that was new to me at the time, and that spawned the next stage of my trajectory, which was to go out to the University of Saskatchewan to learn a little bit about anaerobic microbiology, and to get involved in a project that allowed me to explore some interest at the time, and it was that which led me there, and which then equally created a whole set of experiences and circumstances and collisions, serendipitous and otherwise, that happened. And next thing you know, you find yourself in the next role and the next position, and then also taking some chances, and maybe not doing something that seemed quite conventional and straightforward, but maybe taking a bit of a turn left or right because it just was interesting, and it challenged you to think a little bit differently, and the role of meeting and engaging with people along the way that influenced you. So the advice is that there's no advice except to follow the things that really interest you, and explore those things, and not be afraid about taking some risks and chances. And if it is your goal to do one thing or the other, that's great, and follow that dream. But also be prepared for the things that the winds that blow by and take you in a different direction as well. And that was the nature of the beast. And so fast forward to the start of an academic career, I mean, you don't start off thinking I'm going to be vice president of research, or I'm going to be a president or an administrator. You want to give to your community. You want to be a professor, you want to be a scholar, you want to teach, you want to interact with students. And I got to do all of that, right? And at some point, somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, well, would you mind sitting on this committee and maybe sitting on that committee? And next thing you know it, you're taking on a bit of that and giving back service and supporting mentorship to others, not only students, but to faculty and staff. And that becomes part of your journey and part of the role that you take on over time. But it wasn't that if there was this prescriptive plan that I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that. And yes, I've moved around, not because of desire to leave one place to go to the other. It was also about the opportunity. And when those things opened up, and I've been at the precipice of some very interesting experiences at the University of Guelph, Queen's University, and coming back to Toronto at Toronto Metropolitan University, and along the way, and that's just been a remarkable journey. I'm very, very thankful and fortunate for the experiences and opportunities I've had in my career. But there was no design. It was just do the best you can do, and things you do, give back, and when you. If people think of this journey as a remarkable journey, and boy, he was really successful, then I think the important message there was coming to recognition along the way that it wasn't about me anymore, right? And as a young academic, you want your space, you want the grants, you want the publications out, and you want the students, and it's all about you. It's all about the resources you can get for yourself and whatever. But it's remarkable when you start thinking about it. Well, it's not about you. It's about that next generation, or it's about your collaborator, or it's about your partner. And so when you think about diversity and inclusion, when you start thinking about others, and you really recognize the value of that just in a fundamental way in which ideas are generated and way partnerships and collaborations. And if you want to work in an interdisciplinary context, you really have to sort of to shed the focus on yourself to begin to realize those around you are the people who you're supporting, and there's a rich community and a wonderful wealth of ideas and individuals who add such value, and friendships that form, and relationships and collaborations that last a lifetime. So I think that's the critical feature. If you do have aspirations, you really want to start making a difference in that way, you've got to start thinking about yourself, right?
Yeah. And so, very quick follow-up question that just came because you mentioned about your mobility to 3 different universities. I'm assuming that the mobility helps getting different perspective and also learn a lot of different sides of the operations as well, because I'm thinking each university operates a little bit differently.
So several things about that. So it begins with that experience you have. So certainly after finishing my PhD, I'm going abroad and having an international experience and living in another country and enjoying the opportunities that presents. I've always been very strong on that idea of brain circulation and what that means not only to yourself but to the country and the value that presents. There is that difference. The difference is largely in culture, and yes, there are some differences in processes, and there's differences in maturity of institutions. And so, each of the institutions I've worked at have been very unique in their own right, but they all fundamentally have certain things in common. At least the institutions that I worked with, a very strong commitment to students.
Yes.
In all 3 instances, and notwithstanding the history and trajectory of the institutions and their reputations as they lie globally, there is excellence in every institution I've worked at. And people should not forget that. And that's diversity too. So every institution has its history, its trajectory, and its orientation, and that diversity adds to the strength and to our country and the perspectives. And they are represented by communities and populations of groups of people that are different as well, and in communities that are different from each other. But there is excellence in each one of those, and that's the thing you need to appreciate. So, I often found myself more interested in the opportunity to make a change and make a difference, right? And when I had the chance to do that, and each one of those institutions, albeit at different stages in their evolution, I mean, a Nobel Prize winning, environment when I was at Queen's, when Art MacDonald won the Nobel Prize, to, of course, University of Guelph's orientation and its excellence in agri-food and life sciences, and TMU and Ryerson, which is an institution that has really has brought a strong orientation, particularly around diversity and inclusion and innovation, but as an urban-based institution with a very strong city focus, and but one that has transitioned and evolved to become not only a fully comprehensive university in every regard, but will be a university with a medical school in 2 years. Right?
Oh, cool. That is exciting.
Yeah. So.
And so, Dr. Liss, thank you for a elaborated answer. This is very appreciative. You mentioned EDI and inclusion in our conversation. So my next topic is towards EDI, and we know that multiple institutions and the government funding agencies have put a lot of effort in really implementing EDI towards research and research culture. But we still have a gap, and we still have a target to meet. So could you share some thoughts on this topic?
So let me say at the outset,
Yeah.
I was a graduate and amongst a generation that was pretty homogeneous and looked a lot like me, right? And particularly in the STEM areas. And so I'm very mindful of my role as an administrator and as an academic and as a professor and as a mentor to think about my responsibilities with respect to inclusion and diversity and opportunities for all. So let me begin by saying, it begins at a very fundamental level of belief and commitment and the value that you see in diversity and inclusion for the work you do. And for me, it's about ideas. And it is another element of brain circulation. And I think that's particularly an important perspective. And it begins from the moment you conceive of an idea. So I think about just our hiring and recruitment strategies. When I think about the orientation to our Canada Research Chairs and the work we've done on the Canada Excellence Research Chairs, particularly in recruitment of Anna Trianda Philidou and the process that involved. It's not a checkbox, right?
Yeah.
It begins fundamentally at the beginning of what you want to achieve, and when you do that and you set the table for the opportunity to cast the net as wide as you can, and you really work hard to from the moment you've even conceived of the idea to the people who are around the table, to the processes and so forth. You will find yourself in the right spot down the road. It has to begin that early. So it's important for all of us to be mindful of our own education and own experiences and so forth. And we all have lived experiences in different contexts. I can't dismiss the fact that I am who I am, a white male of a certain age, but I also recognize that my grandparents were refugees, and that's something that I have to be mindful of. A different generation, and a different era, but it's recognizing that people need opportunities. And that's what education is about, is opportunity. And it's also reflected in many of the things I've led and have developed and supported at our institution, whether it's Future Skills Center, our orientation to cybersecurity advanced training, and lowering the barriers and leaving no Canadian behind. That's the intent, right? And there's just a wealth of creativity and ideas, and how can you achieve excellence without that? So that's fundamental. How you go about doing it and what you specifically do and so forth. Yes, it's programming. Sometimes it's particular areas of focus, be it supporting our Black scholars to our Indigenous communities and creating the types of programs that supports what they need to be doing, particularly with regards to their community-based work and their traditions of sharing outcomes of their scholarly and research work, and how to recognize that and support it. But it's not solutions that I can offer unless I'm working with the communities and engaging them. And it's to sit there and profess about EDI without having people around me who have all sorts of different perspectives on EDI and come from lived experiences or the important communities that we are trying to support and help in many ways. It's particularly important. Yes, there is the recommendations that have come out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There was this standing strong task force at our university that my office and the VP Equity Community Inclusion supported, which led to the recommendation for the name change, but also 22 other recommendations, right, with respect to indigeneity and supporting Indigenous culture and recognition, and of course programming, and of course supporting our Indigenous scholars and research community. So you have to work within the community, but you have to be mindful too. You're learning all the time. And I still learn, and I still want to learn, and I learn also from my students, who are representative of a wide variety of different backgrounds and perspectives, and represent the kind of diversity that we hope to see in every way. But it doesn't begin because you've got a checkbox and you've got some targets. In my view, I think it really begins with a deep appreciation of your own limitations and what you need to do to overcome those, but also what you want to achieve and how you to do that from the outset. The moment you even conceive of something, you have to be mindful of what that means at the start before you, to achieve the outcomes you can possibly you hope to achieve. And that's really, to me, a critical feature. But it's a value proposition. It's not a checkbox or a particular program that we have in the university called EDI. Yes, we have an office that's responsible for community inclusion and equity and human rights. We work to support the Dimensions program, around the Dimensions Charter, our obligations to do better with respect to diversity in terms of our faculty complement, our staff, and certainly our students as well. And in that context, it's not about just the diversity of students at the university, but ensuring that their pathways are not, there are no barriers along the way, right? Yeah. It was striking to me, this was an equity issue, particularly with respect to gender, but I had chaired the board of management of Triumph and sat on the board for many, many years. A wonderful facility, and notwithstanding the fact that nearly half of the graduate cohort in physics are women. Wow. But how many of those women are going on into faculty positions or going on to senior leadership positions in leading large physics programs? It's beginning to change, but it was amazing that there were still these barriers, right? And when you even have achieved some level of equity, but you're not seeing it through post career and being involved in the leadership and trying to support and mentor all the way through, then you're really not doing your job. And I go to individual faculty members, right? Your job, particularly supervising graduate students, it doesn't end when they finish their degree. The connections you make and the support you can provide them for them down the road is hugely important.
Lifetime.
It's a lifetime, right? Yeah. And eventually, some of them get really successful. They come back and support you. So in many ways, but the point is that it's a lifelong relationship, and we need to think about that. Whether it's personal or being able to guide them and ensure that they have the resources that they can draw upon to continue. And I think those are the types of things that make a difference in the world, or will make a difference in the world. But we're all learning.
No, that is a great answer. Thank you. Very informative. So, as you are also the Vice President of Innovation with research, and Canada has now seen a huge surge or rapid surge with different fields, especially biotech sector after pandemic. We have seen a lot of biotech companies coming up and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts about how Canada can improve our economy based on innovation? Which particular sector you think is more that needs more attention?
Yeah, so I'm going to stay away from the question about which sector.
Okay.
Partly because I'm not here to pick and choose and so forth.
But I can repeat my question if you want.
No, but I think it's important to say that because I think that sometimes we get caught up in this idea like what sector and what areas of focus. So I do have a strong predilection to draw on create curiosity and the serendipity that arises from discovery and the academic freedom to pursue different thoughts and ideas and to undertake research as individuals see fit. Of course, we've got peer review and we've got other things, and in fact, actually, we have many different obligations now that faculty are expected to meet with regards to their contributions to the academy, and increasingly, being pressured to commercialize and translate their work and so forth. And institutionally, we're being heavily oriented towards that. And I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a combination of things. But I think there are many gaps in the way in which we've not have created a strong pipeline, and that comes through experiential experiences. That includes how we've supported postdocs and graduate students and their ideas independent of their faculty supervisors. There is some cultural shifts and orientation that faculty need to understand. It's not about them inventing widgets and building businesses necessarily, but recognizing that, when we heard this morning at sessions, that 80 to 90% of graduate students were not going to end up in the academy, and that's been the case all along. It hasn't really changed dramatically, even from my time and starting my PhD. So we need to understand that, but we need to make sure that there's not only the receptor capacity, but that actually the individuals coming through our programs are well prepared. And it's a rich opportunity for knowledge development and skills and expertise to think about what can be brought out from the diversity of talent, but the richness of the work, of the experiences and skills that they're developing in their graduate programs. I'm not overly concerned about the fact that their research is focused on their scholarly output and knowledge creation and meeting the requirements for their PhD or master's degrees, but what else can we be doing to enhance the experiential opportunities for them to be prepared to work? And I think there are many programs like MyTax and others, but I think there's Lab to Market and iInc and eye that you name the acronyms, it's an alphabet soup of things across the country that are, I think, beginning to make a difference, and that's really important. So how do we stoke that pipeline and encourage it, and be purposeful and intentional? But it takes some due diligence. And I think it's fair to say that we struggle with sometimes the expertise to actually bring some strong experts to help and facilitate. It's domain experts in fields, people with really significant entrepreneurial experiences. We have an accelerator devoted almost exclusively to cybersecurity, the Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst. We just took 6 of the companies that have come through to New York City, right, and outstanding, right. Group of individuals and opportunities for them to scale and grow in areas of where there's real opportunity to be able to do that. So you've got to be purposeful and intentional, and you need the supports around it. So it's giving us positive, and it's not. And as we heard this morning, it's not just about intellectual property, right? In fact, that's the thing about our offices of research and innovation. That's what I did at Guelph. I did at Queen's. I mean, we manage intellectual property. But there was a lot of good stuff that came out of that. Don't get me wrong, but it's more than that, right? And I think that's what we have to be doing here in this country. It has to be really built into the culture, right? It's got to be more deeply embedded in the culture from the outset. And the professoriate has to embrace it, not to the extent that they have to always be entrepreneurs and innovators, but they have to know that they're there to support their students. And there's increasing demand and increasing desire among students to want to do more of that. And so how can we make them flourish and be successful?
Thank you. This is a great answer. And so my last question is to you about CSPC. And so we really thank TMU to support us for a very long time. I was just wondering, what benefits do you see by partnering with CSPC on this occasion?
Well, so as I reflected this morning, and I know this will be out of context for people who might be watching this and not hearing what was said this morning, but I chaired a panel this morning and on new frontiers and challenges and the opportunities and the challenges all around that, and it's really about our full participation in the innovation ecosystem and bringing value to the intractable challenges that our country is facing and the world is facing, and how we do that more effectively. And you heard from several really outstanding thought leaders on the subject. But it was for me, the CSPC has given me a wonderful platform to build, since about 2018-19, a series of outstanding sessions that have really brought critical conversations to bear. And I think that's been hugely important. And and I've seen great value. I've learned a lot from it. I've even published, at least on one occasion, work that came out of this, and I look to continue to figure out how we can take this information and really empower us to see some translation of these discussions into key policy questions and issues that might form the basis of new policy directions and so forth. So for me, this is a great venue for that opportunity. I think CSPC has provided a wealth of opportunity to young scholars such as yourself and to volunteers who have a real desire to give back and want to learn from others and so forth. And I think about the absence of these sorts of things when I was a graduate student and an early career researcher. So I think we want to encourage more of that. My challenge is, and Mehrdad won't be surprised to hear this because we talk a lot about it, is how can CSPC further advance and position itself as a major focal point for policy discussions. And when I say science policy, to be going out there and making sure people understand it's not science in its broadest context, right? As some people have challenged this notion that sometimes we're only talking about STEM and we're not. But I think we need to think about CSPC's deeper base within the policy discussions and framework in the country, because there is a real gap, in my view, in where government lies with regards to some key questions and this relationship between the academy and government in policy. So I'll be honest, at our university, we had a task force on public policy, and I took the lead to establish that. I had my associate VP research innovation, Naomi Adelson, and Matthew Mendelson, who has been an academic, has been a policy leader, but he's also worked in government federally and provincially, co-chair this across our university, and with the premise that is it time for our institution to, in order to be able to bring the diverse voices and unheard voices on key issues that should be there, is it time for a School of Policy Studies?
Yes.
In our university. And that's where we're heading now. So that was one of the recommendations that's come out of this, and there's now a next step in that development. So I think there's really a strong need for more conversations and more focus on policy, generally speaking. But I think CSPC has a real opportunity to sort of deeper to deepen its connections in Ottawa in particular, and in programming and initiatives across the country. That, to me, that's hopefully a journey. It's been a wonderful journey to see CSPC grow as it is, and the reception particularly to the annual conference, and obviously the types of conversations that actually we should be having more frequently. But the ability to have those kinds of conversations, we're bringing people like Stephen Toop and Simon Kennedy together, and Sophie Demour and Alicia Amin from SFU, and for me, that is just remarkable that you can pose a question, pose a set of ideas, and they say, yeah, I'd like to come and talk about that. That was pretty exciting for me. And we've done that now over the last 3 or 4 years, including virtually last year and the year before. So to me, this is what CSPC does, but how can you leverage that to do more, right? And to be more critical to the conversations of policy across Canada.
Wow, thank you. So on behalf of CSPC, I really thank you, Dr. Liss, for your time and giving us the insight on many aspects that we talked today.
Well, I appreciate the chance to have a chat with you, and enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.